I'm delighted to welcome Katherine Field as our speaker today. As you know, Katherine is the curator of our successful exhibition at Sir Alfred Munnings, 1878 to 1959, A Life of His Own. I'm sure many of you have seen the exhibition either at the Osborne Studio Gallery or now at the National Horse Racing Museum. There are still copies of the catalogue edited by Katherine available. It's a superb record of the exhibition. And I'd like to mention that the foreword was written by our patron, Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Cornwall. And every image that is in the exhibition is in the catalogue. When I introduced Katherine last year, when she gave a talk on our previous exhibition, Lionel Edwards' Scene from the Saddle, I said her credentials were a series of rehearsals and warm-ups for putting on an Edwards show. This is even more true when putting on an exhibition to capture the various aspects of work by Munnings. Katherine has the right blend of academic and practical experience to produce an exhibition and catalogue almost on her own. Yet again, we gave her very little time to prepare this exhibition and to agree all the loans. I hope you agree that she's come through the test with flying colours. Katherine's currently the senior editor at the Philip de Laszlo catalogue Raisonné. This is not just a backroom job making sure everything is factually correct about the thousands of pictures produced by de Laszlo. It is very certainly front of house with the responsibilities for promoting the work of Philip de Laszlo in Hungary, the land of his birth, and in London, through exhibitions that she curates, online lectures and various essays and publications. So we're obviously delighted that she had time to do the work for us. She's a graduate of the University of Guelph in Ontario with an honours degree. You may detect a slight Canadian lilt as she speaks. After that, she held a number of research posts at the Tate, Foundling Museum, Anthony Mould Limited, Charles Bennington Limited, the V&A Museum at Childhood, as well as doing a number of freelance jobs. So well qualified, and that's why we're grateful that she could accept our invitation to put on the exhibition. So Katherine, over to you, and thank you for all the work you've done on our behalf.
Thanks, Tim. Very kind, very, very kind. It really does feel like my career has led up to doing this exhibition. I've ridden most of my life as well, and currently ride for the Household Cavalry as a civilian sport rider. So I'm a horsewoman as well as an art historian. So there's no one better than Munnings really to do an exhibition on, and it's a great privilege that I've been given to do by the British Sporting Art Trust. So I will just share my screen with you so you can get started. The title of the exhibition is, for me, one of the most difficult things to do. Actually, sorry, I'm just trying to make it do the slideshow. Sorry, guys. It doesn't want slideshow today. Never mind, we'll carry on regardless. So the title of the exhibition is always the most difficult thing, but I was shown a lovely little clip of an interview with Violet Munnings done after her husband's death in 1961. And she said that Munnings lived in a world of his own, a life of his own. And I think that is absolutely the best description of him. He really followed his own direction in life through painting in a traditional art way, and his art practice, learning through drawing and painting repetitively, sometimes similar subjects over and over again. And this was at a time when the art world was very much changing, it was modernizing. So we start to see this influx of isms, so modern constructivism, vorticism, and Munnings was very much against that. And I think that came through in his Royal Academy speech in 1949, most volubly. But it means that Munnings isn't really taught in the academic sphere. So I didn't hear about Munnings until I came to do a master's degree in London, and I was at the Sotheby's Institute. And thanks, Sally. Would you like to say something?
Yes, I'm sorry. Just to say that your PowerPoint isn't quite showing properly. You're not in full screen, so we see your taskbar above at the moment. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, for some reason it's not letting me share the. It's not bringing up the little tab that allows me to make it a. And that's going very wrong. A slideshow, oddly, as it did earlier, perfectly.
Can't think of a suggestion at the moment. It looks like
Yeah.
you pulled it in through Google. I'm sorry, just bear with us a minute, and so we'll see if we can get this in full screen. It looks like you've done it through through Google or
Let me
something.
try stop share again and then share again.
I'm sorry about this, everybody. We'll just try and get it better. If not, we'll just continue.
Yeah, for whatever reason, it's not bringing up the little taskbar.
Do you want to just have a quick look in settings, which is the cog on the right hand side? Nope, that's not it. We don't want to put in your passwords. I'm flummoxed, Catherine.
Yeah, me too. I've never had this.
No, I've never had this before either.
No,
Uh,
nothing is bringing it up that I can do.
Okay, we'll just continue, and I apologise to everybody that we've not got the premium thing, but I think it's probably better to continue as we are, as we can see the slide. I'm sorry to interrupt, Catherine. Please go ahead.
So you can see something at least.
Yes, we can see it. It's just that it's got your
You also
Google
have all
tags,
my
tags.
You know, I have no explanation. Sorry, guys. Very annoying, as it was working perfectly earlier. Anyway, so the very first Munnings I saw was actually this one. It was, we had an art dealer come in to speak to us at Sotheby's Institute, and I was doing my MA. And it just immediately struck me, what a powerful artist and what a powerful picture this was. And this is Munnings working towards the end of his life. He went up to Newmarket and he was painting the racehorses there, and he was just fixated by the movement and the silk. And I just thought, an artist who can paint like this, why have I not heard about him before in my studies? And thankfully, having stayed in Britain, I've been able to see much more of Munnings, but it's still difficult to see an exhibition. So I think we need to be very thankful to the British Sporting Art Trust for allowing this exhibition to happen, so people can see the pictures in person, because they are very, very different entities in person. You start to see the texture and the color and the tone, and photographs, they can be good, but they're just never, they never do the pictures justice. So unfortunately, the modern art world has really won out over classical artists like Munnings. He's remained popular in the sale rooms, he remains popular with the public, but it's very difficult to see his work hung in any of our galleries around the country. Thankfully, we have the Munnings Art Museum in Dedham, which is very much worth a visit. But Tate has 3 pictures, but they rarely show them. They did show the Royal Procession at Ascot recently, but he's a difficult artist to find, which is a real shame. And I was amused by the Antiques Trade Gazette last week, because it sort of showed what Munnings was fighting against. So on the left, you have the modernist pictures by Twombly, and on the right, you have David Jagger, who was a contemporary of Munnings, in hunting dress. And the side Twombleys are in the sort of hundreds of thousands, and this lovely huntsman owned by, well, it's currently on sale with Sim Fine Art, is in the region of 50,000. So you can see where the market still pushes this modern style. It's quite an interesting picture, this one. So on the left is the Jagger. But he's dressed the tent coat that he wore to a Chelsea Art Club ball. And so you can, this is the picture that Munnings did of the aftermath of the ball when they all returned to the studio, a little bit worse for wear. It's obviously morning. It's not his own studio, so I don't know if it's Jagger's or one of his other artist friends that are shown in that picture, but this is very much Munnings, the entertainer. Munnings loved society and parties, and so this is a lovely little snapshot of his life at that time. And this is actually the studio, which is next door to me right now. So every day I come to work and I feel very personally connected to Munnings because we walked the same street, Glebe Place in Chelsea. So that's my office doorway on the right-hand side of the photograph, and that's Munnings on the left. And he was here for about 2 years after the First World War. He was a very successful exhibition for the Canadian Cavalry, which we'll see a little bit about later. And he was able to rent this studio for a couple of years before he bought Castle House, where the Munnings Art Museum is now. And around the corner from here as well in Chelsea is the home he built, Golden House, which is in Chelsea Park Gardens, and a little lovely photograph of him outside there with his chauffeur, which the Munnings Art Museum have kindly lent me from their archive. But it's a lovely house, so I feel a very personal connection with Munnings here in Chelsea. And I think the more you work with him, the more you read his writing, the more you spend time with him, I think the more you slightly fall in love with him, I have to say. And I think Laura Knight, his friends and colleagues in Lamorna down in Cornwall before the First World War, I think felt the same. And then this is my favorite quote about him and his overwhelming vitality. And I think that very much comes through in his writing and other people's stories about him and his painting. Absolutely, the paintings. When you walk into a room of his paintings, you just feel his energy and his vitality. So this is a wonderful picture that starts off the exhibition in Newmarket. It's a portrait by Harold Knight and a fantastic loan from Richard Green, who's the dealer. But has a wonderful story attached to it because it's actually hidden behind a painting by Laura Knight. So both pictures were stretched across the same stretcher with this underneath. And when the Laura Knight picture was submitted to Christie's about 10 years ago for sale, they made this discovery. So can you imagine taking one canvas off and this amazingly luminous, wonderful portrait of Munnings appearing underneath? He's very well known for reciting either his own works or Edgar Allan Poe's Raven at parties. So this, I think, is likely him reciting the Raven to a group of friends. And this is part of a bigger picture that Harold Knight submitted to the Royal Academy, which is now lost, unfortunately, but hopefully will make a reappearance one day soon. So the exhibition is divided into 4 different themes. And one of these, which is what everyone knows him for, is his sporting art. So his work in horse racing and hunting. And I've tried to pull together some key examples of both types and important races. And I think the best one, for me anyway, is this incredible picture of humorist and Donahue going out to the Epsom Derby in 1921, which is quite a large canvas. So I've hung it by itself effectively in the Newmarket leg of the exhibition. And it takes up the center of the gallery and looks wonderful. And I think people are really excited to see it because it hasn't been exhibited since 1923 at the Royal Academy. And it shows Donahue and humorist who very sadly died soon after this. Not a well horse, talented, but had suffered hemorrhages. And soon after this race, when Munnings was up at the yard sketching and making preparations for this painting, he had a fatal hemorrhage and died. So extremely sad story, but beautiful picture. And that's Steve Donahue, who's one of the foremost jockeys of the day, and actually came to the studio next door here to be painted by Munnings. So Munnings had a wooden saddle horse where his sitters would sit. It's very difficult to paint someone on a horse because they're moving all the time. So Munnings had a wooden saddle horse in the studio where people could come and he could take his time about it. So a really exciting loan, this one, and I'm thrilled to have it, and big thank you to the lender. Munnings was fascinated by horse racing, and when he made his money in portrait painting after the First World War, he traveled back up to Newmarket and spent a lot of time there. And he used this rubbing house, which is on the heath. It's the only one left of the historic rubbing houses that you see depicted by people like Stubbs and Wotton, which were used by horses between races to cool down. And so Munnings spent a lot of time here, just watching the starts of the races. The start of the Cedar course is just outside. It's a beautiful place, and you can imagine Munnings spending a lot of time there, just sketching and watching and enjoying. He loved horse racing, so you know, these pictures are things that he was doing for the good of his soul almost, and he never tired of the subject. He kept going from post Second World War until his death very nearly. And again, Newmarket, this is a scene that really hasn't changed. I popped up there the other morning to take a photograph, so you can see the buildings haven't changed. The riders are wearing helmets now, so they've changed a little bit. But it's a really wonderful morning, and I think everyone rides past you and says good morning, and the horses are either relaxed after their gallop, or they're really excited, jogging off to take part in the gallops. And it's a really special place. Munnings is a bit of a romantic and a historian, and I think he felt the power of hundreds of years of history that hadn't changed in that little spot, and so he tried to convey that on canvas. So the other subject for which he's certainly renowned is his hunting pictures, and thankfully we have a few good ones in the exhibition. This is an early one. This was done before the First World War, when he was down in Cornwall at Lamorna. So this is his groom Ned Osborne on Greytick. They're quite a well-known model for his pictures of this period. Well, both of them are well-known models. And this is Venner Hill. So he dressed Ned up in hunt clothes, and off they went, and he would sketch, and spent lovely long days there, which he writes about in his autobiographies, which are definitely worth a read. And this is an absolute stunner. This is actually in the British Sporting Art Trust collection, so they very kindly let me borrow it. I tried to leave most of their collection in situ at Palace House, so it gave visitors to Newmarket the ability to see even more Munnings than what was in the exhibition. But this is one I did borrow. So the Earl of Winterton, this is a commission to thank him for his 7 years of at Huntsman of the Chiddingfold. Beautiful picture, and I put it on a sight line in the gallery space, so you look from where you come in, you see it right down the end of the gallery. It looks fantastic. Another section which I thought was really important to try and discuss in detail is how Munnings became the artist that he is known as today. Before the First World War, he's a bit more of a provincial artist. He grew up in around Norwich and Suffolk, and then went to Cornwall. And then it's really the First World War that changes this for him. So he goes off to the front working for the Canadian Cavalry. He couldn't sign up himself because he had lost an eye in an accident with a blackthorn in 1898. So it's a remarkable thing to think that all of these paintings that I'm showing you today have been done with one eye. Thankfully, it held it for the entirety of his life, but it sort of underlines his genius even further. So the Canadian Cavalry were looking for war artists, and Paul Cannody knew Munnings and suggested him as a likely candidate, knew of his love of horses and ability to paint horses. So it's quite a nice for me as a born Canadian to see these pictures. And a few years ago at the National Army Museum, we were able to see them in full. So the 45 pictures that were exhibited at the Royal Academy in London after the First World War, which cemented Munnings' reputation as a great painter. These all returned from Canada, and we were able to see them at the Army Museum in, I think, 2018 it was extraordinary. So they were all of this sort of type, This is a bit larger than most of the ones that were exhibited, and this was actually kept by Munnings in his studio, and until it was bought by the Exhibition Art Gallery in 1938. So this is the photograph I received on the left, but when it actually arrived and I saw it in person, it was a completely different picture. Unfortunately, it's under glass. I haven't been able to get a better example of the coloring, but it's much more luminous, much brighter, the sky is much bluer. So it's almost a figure of hope riding through the landscape of the decimated French countryside during the war. And I've just included a couple of details. You can see the reflection of the glass. I'm sorry about that, but it really is a picture done by an artist who's reveling in his ability to paint and use color. And it's thickly painted. The impasto is really dense, and I think it's probably one of my favorite discoveries of the exhibition. Really, the surprise when it arrived at the Osborne Studio Gallery was wonderful. And while he was with the Canadians, they were commanded by General Jack Seeley, who is a British officer from the Isle of Wight. And there's a wonderful quote from him of Munnings' arrival on the front. So I'll just read that to you because I think it really shows Munnings for who he is. So Seeley recalled that Munnings was not then as famous as he is now, but even then discerning folk saw in him the most brilliant painter of horses of his day, and perhaps of all time. He turned up one morning in plain clothes in this bleak area where for months no human being had been seen in anything but French, English, or German uniform. Of course, it had never been the intention of the Canadian authorities that Munnings should join us in the front line, but this whimsical and gallant soul thought that this was just the best place in which to be. And so it turned out, for by common consent his paintings and drawings of the Canadian horses close up against the front line are some of the most brilliant things he has ever done. And this is one of the first works he did on the left, which is General Jack Seeley on the famous warrior, his charger, who was born on the Isle of Wight and somehow survived the war to return home again. And so this was exhibited at the Royal Academy, and people saw this. And this is a really new type of equestrian portrait. It's a much more domestic style, which people could commission for themselves and have in their homes. So one of the earliest commissions he had was for Sir Raymond Green here on the right, which is from the Munnings Art Museum, and a great loan to have because it is really one of their key pictures. But it shows you how he's developing this new type, which led to more patrons. Warrior is also in the exhibition in this wonderful little drawing, which Jack Seeley and Munnings stayed friends for the rest of their lives, and Seeley commissioned him to do the illustrations for a book he wrote, a biography he wrote about Warrior, which this is one of the illustrations for that book. So Warrior somehow lived on until the Second World War, when unfortunately his age and lack of grain meant that he was put down. But he was known as the horse the Germans couldn't kill. So he survived, the entirety of the war at the front and returned home and won a point exactly a year after the last cavalry charge of the First World War. And so he was visited by Queen Mary at Modestone in that other little photograph on the bottom. So my parents lived not far from here. So this is a story that I really love and have spent a lot of time on the downs where Warrior and Jack Seeley lived and rode. So a nice personal addition for me. I was very glad to have it. And another commission that came out of these military commissions was the opportunity to go to paint the beaver hunt and hounds up at Woolsthorpe. So Major Tommy Bouch commissioned him and gave him the freedom to paint whatever subject he liked. So you start to see an artist who is given freedom, it will always do their best work. And there are some wonderful examples in the exhibition of which these are two. So the hounds at the kennels and then being taken out on exercise, which is a wonderful picture. I really love this one. And when it was exhibited, Munnings, Impressionism hadn't quite taken hold in England yet. So he did make a mention that this was done on the spot. And the 1910 exhibition that Roger Fry had organized hadn't met with a great reception. So England was still catching up to the sort of plein air painting Impressionism. but Munnings was certainly at the forefront of that. And this is Dear Brown Jack, who I've completely fallen in love with. You don't really think of sculptures having personalities, but this one absolutely does. And he really took on a little character of his own. This is in the gallery on the left in London at the Osborne Studio Gallery. And there was a little ledge seated there. And you just sat and looked up at him. And you felt like you knew this horse by the end of the afternoon, end of the showing there. He was just so much fun. And this is him in this little box, Jack in the Box, about to go off to Newmarket. So Jack actually came. Wellman Racehorse won the Queen Alexandra Stakes 6 times. There's now a Brown Jack Stakes, of which this trophy was made or commissioned to be used at Ascot during the running of the race. And there were 5 casts made. So this belongs to the Munnings Art Museum. They are lucky enough to have 2. So I was very thankful to borrow this. But Jack actually came to visit Munnings at home at Castle House and spent time there being making the model, and he was painted as well. And I think Munnings really shows his love of the horse through his description of Jack. He really understood horses. So he writes in his autobiography, another horse that honored me with a visit was the illustrious Brown Jack, an ornament to the racing world as long as it lasts. A more unassuming, kinder, modest horse character never lived. There used to be stories told about Brown Jack, how he had a way of seating himself, as it were, on his manger in the corner of his box. I have seen the horse in this position. I should never have believed it if I had not seen it. What a horse was this! Wise head, kind eye, large ears, magnificent shoulders. He stood slightly over at the knee. I should know what the horse was like, for he was in my stables for 6 weeks, whilst I made a model of him for the bronze statuette, which I did for Justin. It is placed at the top of the steps to the royal enclosure at Ascot during the day when the race for the Brown Jack Stakes is run. And funnily enough, because of the Lionel Edwards exhibition last year, I remembered seeing this little drawing of Brown Jack seated on his manger, which Munnings described. So that was quite a nice little drawing to be able to show you. And then here he is in the exhibition space at Newmarket. So it's quite fun to be able to have the big blow up of the photograph of Munnings in the studio with Jack and the model, which is still kept at the Munnings Art Museum. You can go and see it there in the studio, which is good. And this corker, which came from the Household Cavalry Regiment, very kind of them to lend it to me. It's normally not seen by the public at all. It was at Bolford Camp in the officers' mess there. And it shows the Standard Parade of 1927, which quite often when officers leave the regiment, they give something to the mess. So they were extremely lucky to receive this painting by Munnings, which is still absolutely a treasure for them. And it shows King George V with the standard for the flag, which the troops would follow in battle, being paraded past him. And quite a topical picture because we've just had troops in the colour, so it's quite a similar sight that you see today, quite a familiar one for many of us. And Munnings actually was allowed to go down to Horse Guards, and the Admiralty, which is the building you see behind you, put out all the flags that they would during the parade. So there are lots of people questioning, who's this man, what's he doing? And he spent hours there painting. Really enjoyed it. Said he could make a École de Beaux-Arts of the regiment because there was so much to paint, and he really enjoyed this commission. But very different from most of his other work, so it's quite nice to bring this to show it. And it's hanging next to the First War Trooper that we saw earlier. This is another really special loan. It only came to Newmarket, but it's from Herwood House in Yorkshire, and it shows Princess Mary. So this is to show the royal patronage that Munnings received. So he was commissioned by Princess Mary, he was Prince of Wales, Montforest, which was his first royal commission in 1921. And he painted Queen Mary in the royal procession for Ascot, which is in the Tate collection now. So he considered this one of his best female portraits. And it's a motif that he used throughout his career, this rider in a wood landscape, and it's really combining the quite tight descriptive lines of his commission work with the impressionist landscape of the forest. It's very effective, really lovely. And it was actually painted at Newmarket, so during the Craven meeting, he stayed at Edgerton House there. And a great loan, very special loan. I was very thrilled to have this one. So as with any portrait painter, their commissions tend to take them away from the work that they really love to do. So it was important within the exhibition to show what else he could paint. You know, he's not just a horse painter, he's a lover of the English landscape and horses, of course, but because he loved them very much and owned them and bred him his entire life. But it's pictures like these which this section gave me an opportunity to show. This was painted quite soon after he returned from Paris. He studied at the Académie Julien there. So it's full of new color and techniques, and I love it. It's been a really popular one.
I'm sorry about this. We seem to have lost. Oh, it's my internet.
Humorous depiction of his friends who had a shooting. Sorry, Sally. Can you see everything, Sally?
It was just me that I think my internet dropped, and not yours. I'm sorry about that. Carry on, please.
Good. So this has been a very popular inclusion in that section, along with Sir Patrick, who is an Irish horse. So after the 1913 Leicester Galleries exhibition, he made quite a bit of money. So he thought he would go to Ireland to buy some new models and horses that he could hunt himself. And Patrick was one of those. They're a beautiful horse, and you can just about see how vibrant this color, this picture is in person. This blue that you see in the bottom left corner is an absolute lapis blue. It's so stunning. And Patrick was used as the model for two other works. So his friend Dodd Proctor on Patrick, which was painted in Cornwall, and that's in the Russell Coates Museum now. And then also for this incredible sculpture, which I've not seen in person yet, but it is definitely on my to-do list, which is the Edward Horner Memorial at Mells Church in Somerset. So he's not a sculptor, and yet he's done two absolutely brilliant works, of which this is one. His friend Edward Lutchins did the base. They stayed friends for most of their lives. And also this lovely piece from the Lamorna Inn in Cornwall. I think this is a sort of golden time for Munnings. He was surrounded by artist friends and he was seeing new landscapes. He was near the sea and he was finding inspiration in a different light there. But also they had a great time having lots of parties, of which he was generally the ringleader. So Mr. Jory here had a horse called Albert and used to take the artist and his equipment out to various locations around the area so he could paint. But you can see Munnings there leaning in the doorway in his characteristically unusual clothing. Always the bow tie and a picture which has come from the Munnings Museum.
I apologise. We do seem to be having Catherine. Your internet's going in and out, so there's not much we can do about that apart from apologise. I think we should just carry on. I am getting quite a lot of what you're saying, but I apologise to the viewers for the issues. These weren't in on our practice issues, but as I say, we can hear most of what you're saying, Catherine. But you're pixelating and you're freezing. If it stops for a long time, I'll let you know. But as I say, I'm just to let you know and to apologise.
Bloody technology, my goodness. How frustrating, because we had a perfect morning. Anyway.
Yeah.
I will carry on. So Munnings always said that the grey horse is what gave him inspiration, and he never tired of painting them. And that extended into other subjects in his career as well. And so this is a wonderful opportunity to to include a few unusual subjects, but also gave me the cover image for the catalogue, this wonderful little jewel from the Munnings Art Museum of his other Irish horse that he bought in 1913 called the Duchess. And he loved painting her against this granite landscape of Cornwall. And this is a stunning little picture in person. It really shows his facility. I think gray and white are the most difficult tones to show on canvas. And as this picture shows, it's made up of every other hue you can think of. So you have greens and you have these blues that make up the tones for a gray, which is rather fun. And these are two other works included in that section, which I love these oxen nonetheless. It's a really beautiful picture. It was done towards the end of the day, and he was commissioned by Baron Robert Rothschild to come to Chateau de Lavaltine in Chantilly. And he was allowed again to paint whatever he liked, and he just had a romantic connection to these oxen. He loved the way they sort of calmly went about their work every day. And so he made them a subject for a little painting. And then these very unusual rocks from Lamorna Cove on the right-hand side. I don't know, John Singer Sargent was probably the greatest painter of the day, and he had just done a series of works of the Carrara marble fields in Italy. So I don't know if these were inspired by that, but again, just an absolute mastery of tone and paint shown in this one picture. It's really luminous in person, so a wonderful and very different, not what you expect to see from Munnings. I think most people came around and said, I wouldn't know that was a Munnings, and that sort of, it's nice to surprise people in an exhibition context. So this is the exhibition in London. So very different spaces, and it was quite difficult to try and curate one exhibition that would work in both places. I did my best anyway. So you came in and were greeted by Brown Jack and a lovely loan of his first wife Florence, riding in Lamorna, which only came to London and didn't travel on. So we had a few lenders who were happy to lend one or the other, but not both. It's quite a big thing to ask people to be separated from their pictures for any length of time. So quite grateful to have had the ones that we did. And then Tim mentioned that the Duchess of Cornwall came around and very enthusiastic, but she's the new patron of the British Sporting Art Trust, and I think a more enthusiastic patron you couldn't imagine. So it was very, very grateful to have her there. And then Newmarket is very, very different exhibition entirely. You suddenly have space and the pictures have space, and I really enjoyed it up there. It's a bit of a jewel. And then there were some extra loans that came there, which helped to increase the impact. But it's been really busy, and very thrilled that Munnings is still a draw for many people. And as Sally mentioned, there's a catalogue which includes all the works of the exhibition. And I've also commissioned some essays from other leading experts on Munnings. So we have Brendan Lindbergh, who was formerly at Christie's and has sold some wonderful Munnings across the years, and it's quite an interesting essay about Munnings on the market. Trisham Lewis, who's compiling a biography of the artist right now, and also did a wonderful little bronze of Munnings for the exhibition. And Bill Tetheridge at Castle House Munnings Art Museum. So very grateful to them for their essays, but these can all be found in the catalogue, so do enjoy. And just to finish off, if you can pay a visit to Castle House, I really encourage it. So here you can see the model for the Horner Memorial in the studio there. And Munnings' presence is very much felt at Castle House still. So if you want a Munnings fix, I can highly recommend it. Good, I think that's it.
You caught me.
Sorry.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
Well, sorry it's not worked very well, but
I think these technical people need to think about the services they're providing, because they're far from perfect. So more work to be done, but we become victims of their overhyping their systems. But thank you very much for this morning. And I'd like to echo your final words say that more Munnings at Munnings Museum at Dedham. Encourage everybody to go. It's a wonderful location to see the work in a semi-domestic setting, and also the studio that he was working in.
And the landscape as well, which is Constable country. So Munnings had an absolute love of Constable and settled right at the heart of it. So you can walk along the Stour and see scenes, the loft and whatnot in Constable country.
Katherine has said she will take questions. We'll use the system that we've used before. There's a button at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, Q&A. Please type in any questions and I'll put them to Katherine. One of the things that always surprises me, Katherine, is he was a leader. He did pick up the work that was going on in France, the Impressionists. He was a fine exponent of that form of art. Do you think the attitudes will change to his work, or is he always going to be blighted by the talk or the presidential address he gave just after the war to the Royal Academy?
Gosh, I hope not. I think the more people can see the work in person, the more attitudes will change. And I think it's obvious from the exhibition that people, normal people, not in the academic world, love him still. And so there is an absolute appetite for Munnings' work. And I'd love to see the Royal Academy or Tate do a big retrospective. I think it would be really popular. But until, I think it is slowly changing, because there is, the further we get away from the desolation of the 60s, when architecture was being destroyed, everything Victorian was unpopular. This is reflected in attitudes towards painting at the time as well. So I think we're starting to rehabilitate Munnings' period of painting, and it will get there. It will get there. But exhibitions like this are just so important. So thank you to the British Sporting Art Trust for encouraging them.
You captured a number of aspects of his life and through the 4 themes that you chose. Were there other themes that you thought you could choose and chose not to? Were there other pictures you were trying to get that couldn't?
Yeah, the big gap, I think, are the gypsy pictures. So before the First World War, he spent a lot of time around Alton in Hampshire painting the gypsies, their wagons, their horses, their people. And that's definitely a missing piece of this exhibition. But again, I didn't get one. I tried, but it wasn't forthcoming. And that's something when you're curating exhibitions, there are always disappointments like that. But that is a shame.
Do you think there's room for another Munnings exhibition in a couple of years' time?
Yay,
Not necessarily from us, but do you think do you know of others taking up the challenge?
I will take up the challenge. No, I absolutely think there is this appetite for his work, and to do a big retrospective would be wonderful. If you had unlimited budget to get pictures back from America. I mean, maybe it will happen in America, because he was hugely patronized there. He went there in 1924 as a judge for the Carnegie Prize. So, and he did a lot of very good work there, and people like Paul Mellon were all obviously buying pictures and taking them to the Yale Center for British Art. So maybe this will be the nudge they need.
Well, it certainly still manages to command high prices in the sale room. Without a Munnings, the sporting art market looks pretty dead. But as soon as you get 1 or 2 during the year, then it's a real spike in the value.
Well, and I think that shows his quality as an artist as well. He's transcended the sporting art bracket. He is one of our great British artists of the 20th century. And I think that is part of it.
Did you pick up much about his character? He always seems to be a difficult man to work with, and he was very dismissive of others. And yet you emphasize his partying and his happy-go-lucky character.
I think you love him or you hate him, basically. And I am totally in love with him, I think, basically. No, he's passionate. Everything he does is to better his art and to better the art of those he respected. You know, people like Laura Knight, who fought to have her accepted as a Royal Academician. So she's the first female Royal Academician accepted after the foundation of the Academy in 1768, 69. So you had Angelica Kaufman and Mary Moser as female members there, and then no women were accepted until Munnings fought and fought and fought to have Laura Knight made an academician. So, you know, he fought for you if you were his friend. And he was great friends with people like Letchins and Churchill. And he was a member of many clubs as well, the Garrick, the Chelsea Arts Club, which occasionally he would be kicked out as a member for swearing or something. But no, it's a sort of amazing lust for life and painting, and he's never satisfied with what he's done. He always thinks he can do better, and that's what drives him throughout his life. And you know, that's a personality that I relate to. It's someone who's trying and working, always working.
We've set you 2 challenges in the last 2 years, Lionel Edwards, then Munnings. Did you pick up much about the relationship between the 2 of them? Because they were painting at the same time.
They're quite different artists in the sense that Lionel's a bit more of an illustrator and doing sort of hunting scenes and movements, which Munnings is not quite doing that type of work. But I mean, Lionel was certainly very supportive of Munnings after the speech at the Royal Academy. You know, there's a lot of support from artists who had worked all their lives to perfect their drawing and their painting, and they are working from nature. So they're supporting Munnings in his fight against their dismissal from being relevant art producers in this country. I mean, it was pretty nasty on both sides, definitely, but their art was being swept away as though it was worthless and had no value anymore. And you know, I think there's room for both. I think you can like Henry Moore happily alongside Munnings. You know, you don't have to choose. So I hope people look at the pictures and see the quality of what he is doing and his mastery as a tonalist and as an impressionist painter in this country.
Well, Katherine, I think with those words, it's a good time to end. So thank you very much, most importantly, for putting on the exhibition and the trials and tribulations of post-COVID era, lack of time, lack of sleep, all the other things that you had to put up with. But for putting the exhibition together and the catalogue, it's much appreciated. And thank you for the time this morning explaining the exhibition and the passion you have for what you've done. So thank you very much. It's much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I announce the next lecture will be on the 7th of July. It's Oliver Cox. It's building a sporting art collection and the 4th Marquis of Bute, the Bute collection at Mount Stewart. It's a collection that Oliver, has been at Oxford University, but has moved now to the V&A, has been working on for some time. So that's our next talk, 11 o'clock, 7th of July, Oliver Cox. Many thanks, no relation. Many thanks, and much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and I'll say goodbye. Just to let you know, remind you that the exhibition continues till Sunday, the 12th of June, members free. If you're not a member, please join. You can join through the website or by emailing me. And just to reiterate, as I say, the catalogue is still available online through our website as well. Okay, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Katherine.
Thank you.